Welcome to the fastest stop in town today, Masechtas Bava of Chaf Daled. We're going to begin on Chaf Gimel Beis by the Mishnah at the bottom. Says the Masnisan. Ezu Tam Muad. Finally, we get to this question. It took us almost 24 blot to find out what is a Tam and what is a Muad. Kol she'idu bo shloisha yomim. If let's say that this happens 3 times on 3 days. However, if let's say 3 days go by and everything is good, then it reverts back to the status of being a tam. Interesting. Rameir oimer muid she'idu shosha pa'amim. It's not that it happens on 3 different days. It can happen even on 1 day, but 3 times on that same day. Rameir's to the opinion that'll be a muad right away after 3 times. The tam kol shihu hatinaikis mamashmashin boy ve'enon. If you have a bunch of kids playing with this animal and it doesn't gore them, don't try this at home, but that would be proof. Okay. Question 12. Ketzad shor muad chayzer l'tamusai. So we have over here, and again, if let's say it's 3 days and it doesn't gore, or if the kids are playing with it, doesn't go. Okay. Says the Gemara. My time to Yehuda. Why did he come up with these 3 days? So Rabbi, Timoil, Chad, Mitmoil, Trade, Shulshoim, Tlasa. It's 3 days. Lo Yishmerenu, he guarded by the Baal of Atan Negicha Revius. So on the 4th Negicha already, that's when you have to pay. So the first 3 times it's a tam, but after the 3rd time, after it gores, a 3rd time we say the next time it's a muad. Rabbi Omer Timol mit Molchad Shloshim Trey V'Yishmerenu in the Chayiv. So according to Rabbi, no. The way it works is that even by the 3rd Negicha, you have to pay Nezek Shalom. So we have a machlokas whether or not on the 3rd Negicha you still pay Chatzi Nezek or Nezek Shalom. Okay. Rameir my timer. Why does Rameir say that even 3 times in 1 day is enough to make it a muad? The Sanya Rameir, as we have on Chaf Daled Amud Aleph, the famous words of Rameir, which are said elsewhere, Richak negi chaysav chayiv kirav negi chaysav l'koshakain. If this animal does damage 3 days apart, on a Monday and a Tuesday and Wednesday, but 1 time, and that's enough for it to be considered to be a muad. So if it keeps doing it over and over and over and over in a shorter period of time, then certainly it's a muad. Amalei zava tochiach shricha choriyos riyoseha tamea kirba riyoseha taira. When it comes to a zav, says Rashi, you need gimel re'iyos begimel yomim. Tamei zayin yomim. For zav to be tamei 7 days, you can't have 3 riyas on the same day. It has to be 3 consecutive days. So therefore, that's the same thing here. So Mohen, Hari Oimer, the pasuk says in Vayikra, V'zos tia tumasai, b'zoyvai. This is the tuma and the status of being a zav. Tal hakasav is a zav bariyos. Yes, a zav of yomim. So the pasuk specifically says, exerts a kasav, that when it comes to a zav, it's totally in riyas, and when it comes to a zav, it's told by yomim, the amount of days. So therefore, when it comes to a woman, the din is that you're right, it has to be separate days. That's because the pasuk says that, but not by a zav. So it's interesting. we ask a kasher, a pircha on the kavachimer from a zava. You could actually use zav as a raya. The verse says, how do we know it's actually come to exclude women from seeing? That has to be on different days. Maybe it means that when it comes to a zav, if he would see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, he would not be tamei. It's only if he sees it 3 times in 1 day. So we make a connection. When it says to men and women, both of them will become tamei to Meshiva if they see 3 consecutive days. That doesn't matter if you're a zav or a zava. Okay, then v'lakish nekevel zacham, zacham rias av nekevel rias. Why don't we say the same thing when it comes to women? They could also become Tameya, Tuba Zayin, by seeing 3 times consecutively in the same day. Now, he Merachman of V'zois. Yeah, so my Risa. Why does V'zois come to exclude the woman? Mistar Koi, B'riyos, Mamayat Riyos. The Pasuk of V'zois, which is talking about Riyos, that Tol Kosovus is Zob Riyos, it must be coming to exclude someone else from Riyos, namely the Zava, when it comes to her seeing 3 times in one day. Koi B'riyos Mamayat Yomim. So what's coming to exclude? Tanarabban. Yezu Mu'id. What's a Mu'id? Kol she'idu bo shloshi yomim. Testified 3 days. V'tam shiu hatinoikis mamash mishin boi be'enu nogech de Rabbi Yosi. Again, you have this animal being touched over and over by these people, by these kids, and it doesn't do anything. Rav Shimon Omer Mu'id kol she'idu bo shloshi pamim 3 times. V'loi Omer shloshi yomim elo l'chazara bolvad. We only mentioned 3 days regarding chazara. Doesn't mean chazar of learning. It means chazar going back from being a mu'ad to a tam. The notion of 3 days has to go 3 days without doing anything. Omer Rav Nachman, Omer Rav Ada Barava, halacha Rabbi Yehuda b'mu'ad. The halacha, in fact, is like the shita of Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to mu'ad. Sharav Yosi moidaloi, because Rabbi agrees to him. Meir b'tam sharav Rabbi Yosi moidaloi. Basically, we pass like Rabbi Yosi always. So therefore, let's go back. So the halacha of Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to a mu'ad, namely that when it comes to a mu'ad, it's totally on 3 days, not like Rav Meir 3 times in one day, 3 different days. But halacha like Rav Meir when it comes to a tam, regarding kids touching it. Amalei Rebbe Rav Nachman, V'lema Mar halacha Rav Meir, B'mu'ad, Shahar Rav Shimon Moidaloi, halacha Rabbi Yehuda B'tam, when in the halachas of Rabbi Yehuda B'tam, Shahar Rav Shimon Moidalo. So you have fine Rav Yosi, but you have Rav Shimon. So you have a machlokes Rav Yosi Rav Shimon. So why do we have to cite with Rav Yosi? Maybe we should cite with Rav Shimon. So Amrulei Anak Rav Yosi severely. The Rav Yosi Nimuku Yimai. As we said, it's brought down in Erevin and other places. The Rav Yosi is Nimiku Imai. That his depth of understanding is higher than anyone else, and therefore, because of his depth, we will always hold like him. Iboilhu Shloshi Yomim Detani. When we said 3 days, Li'udi Torah or Li'udi Gavra. So, is it that the animal becomes a mu'ad, or is it the person? Maybe it's to let the owner know about it and start guarding. So what is the purpose? Is it for the animal's sake, that's mu'ad, or is it that the person, the owner, should know about it? So my knocking, what's the difference? Just a tlasa, you have 3 people, tlasa kite, sad, you have 3 groups of witnesses that came, b'chad yoima, all on the same day. Now, if you tell me that we're dealing with, it's an ox 3 times, so it's a mu'ad. However, see, the owner can say, listen, I didn't know about this until this moment. So 3 different pairs of witnesses come and talk about 3 different incidents. It all happened, this testimony all happened all at once. So I never had an opportunity to guard my ox. Tashma. Says, it can only become a mu'ad if you're testifying in front of the owner, and they based in. Te'idubo b'fnei beistin, ushul b'fnei balam, b'fnei balam, ushul b'fnei beistin, enu nasamu'ad. Again, achihu boi b'fnei beistin, b'fnei balam. So you do need to let the owners know about this. So in this, it sounds like this case is Le'udi Gavra. Okay. Heiduhu shnayim barishayna, ushnayim b'shniya, ushnayim b'shlishis. Let's say You have 2 witnesses testifying the first incident, 2 in the second, 2 in the third. Harikan sholish adius. This is considered to be 3 testimonies, says Rashi. She'im batal achas mehen. That if one of them is batal, lo batal hashtayim. The 2 aren't batal. You still have to pay half damages. So they're all separate, so that if one of them, for whatever reason, falls apart, the other testimonies are good. But if the testimony is accepted, then of course the din is you'll be a mu'id. It's considered to be edus achas for hazama. What does that mean? So Rashi says like this: Shari aline shloshten hu mu'id. The only reason why because of all 3, now they're making to a mu'id that now they'll have to pay nesek shalom. Hilkach edus achas hein lakach shem nimsas kat rishon zomemes hu patim l'shalom ad hanagicha revius or shlishus chatzi nesek. So because they're all linked, because in order to have to pay, you need to have testimony of all 3. So therefore Rashi says, again, if let's say the first group is a Zaymim, so you don't have to pay except Chatzi Nezek, because obviously you have to wait until all of this takes place. And therefore what was Kasher Zomam for the first kat was really only Chatzi Nezek. Nimsas Kari Shayna Zomemes, let's say the first group is a Zaymim, so Harikan Shtei Edios. You still have the second and third testimonies. V'hu pater v'hein paturin. So the owner is pater because of the hazama. V'hein paturin, says Rashi. Mitashlumi negicha shlishis. V'yavo v'shehin hayu garmin lo l'shalom leha nezek shalem paturin. Shehin ha'edim mishalman mamain ad she'azimu kulan. So the din is actually that the only time Einim Zaymin will have to pay is if they're all Zaymin. So if they're all considered to be the same, so therefore it's not enough. You need to be mazam all of them, which is why they're repotter. This is kat shnia. Let's say not only the first but also the second Zaymemes. Harikan edus achas. We only have the first testimony, the last testimony. Who pater v'hein paturin. However, nimsas kat shlishis zumemes. Let's say all 3 groups are found to be zaymimin. Kun chayavin v'alzen nemar v'yisin l'kasher zomim v'goymer. Okay, so iyamrit li'udei tura shaper, says Rashi. If the whole point is that it's in order to guard, to warn the ox, then that whole makes sense. Says Rashi, why? Being in Gimel Yomim. Gabal Gavra biyom echad ma'ayid matzil ukma. Kishabot kulan biyom echad. If they all came on the same day, says Rashi, she'avian nizik shlishi lahayid al gimel negicha shel gimel yamim. They're testifying on these different gorings. Mishum hachi shaychi kamoi batzad ha'ada. It's possible that even the first group is involved in making him to a mu'id because they're all coming together. Shorglayim l'davar d'shavi mu'id asu. It was clear that since they all came together, it was to make him to a mu'id. Tol matzul meimer anan l'chiyuvi paganiska sinan mikamaisa. That only came really to make him pay half. V'losh l'shavi mu'id. Devani hani yade bahani shari bal negicha shlisha savian. Why do they all come together, right? Bahadi adadi asu. It must be that their intention was to make him a mu'id. Therefore, they make the animal to a mu'id. Therefore, iyamar lu'udi to a shopper. That's why it makes sense. If you're going to say that their intention was to make him pay nezek shalom, even though they're all coming all in the exact same time, then that makes sense. It's all totally on the ox. As we continue to chavdal and beis. However, el iyamar lu'udi gavra, if it's warning the person and they're all coming at the same time, that shouldn't be enough to have to make them pay nezek shalom. Leimer hanach kamoi. The first one can say anan mi havi adin and abasa shloishi yom asu hanu mi'aidle. In other words, they could have said, it didn't happen. It wouldn't be able to have happened concurrently. So therefore, it's a raya. It must be udei Tura. So Ravashi Amrisa L'Shmaisa Kamed Rav Nachman Vermali, he said Le'udi Tura Minicha. You think it's good to explain it regarding the ox being a muad? V'leimer Hanach Masroi. Let the latter group of witnesses come and say Anan us Mananya Dina Nechol Dikoi Bedina Lasahudi Batura Kasu. How do I know that these people before us are coming to testify about the same ox? They could just say, we thought we were the only ones testifying about this ox. We only want to testify about Chatzi Nezek. So they could ask as well. The answer is no, that's not a possibility. The Kuramazi Ramuze, because they were like alluding to each other, they were hinting to each other. In other words, it was clear by the third group of witnesses that they actually understood that these other witnesses were coming for the same purpose, to make into a muad. But again, how's it shaykh you can make into a muad, right? You can, if in fact, if it's Li'udi Gavra, that shouldn't become a muad if they all came at the same time. So Ravashi Aimer Kishabo Ritzufim. Maybe we're talking about a case where they came consecutively. So good Rashi. Marum is ka edi rishayna le edi kat shlisha sheidu. Hilchach vadi achraynim nami lekach neschavnu. Yoidim b'rishaynim. They knew what was going on. So Rav Ashi says ritzufim. What is that? Maybe we're talking about the whole notion after the ox is what becomes a muad. Nicha de mukmi'inan lo kishabo ritzufim. They came consecutively. Kulam bo biyachad. They all came biyachad. Tahash Navadi Yadi Hani Bahani. No, it's not the income Zachar said. They all came at the same time. Ravina Omer B'Makirin Bal Hashor being Makirin as Hashor. And let's say they recognize the owner but not the ox. What does that mean? So it says Rashi, the Ein Makirin as Hashor. Hilkach Onas Chavne El Asoisa Muad. Their intention was to make into a muad. Shahayodim be'edus rishayim. D'mshem chatzi nezek. Given the in makirin as a shore. They don't know the shore. Lo osi umasta'adi the tam in mashalom el magufo. So if you don't know the shore, you can't figure out the guf, the value of the animal. So it must be coming to make it a muad. Because we said, well, the difference between tam and a muad is you pay magufo or minaliyah. So they're not maka the shore. So then obviously it's not coming magufo, which means that they're not thinking about paying, about being chatzi nezek, but rather being a muad. Ella heichim aidile. So how can they testify? Yamri torn nagchana islach bivkarcha. You have a wild animal. I don't know which one it is. You have a wild shore in your flock. You need to safeguard all of them. Okay. All right, let's hold off for a second and let's maybe get a question in. Okay, nothing on question 12. Let's look at a couple Rabbi Gibber's questions. Okay. Matam Shora Meir Desfirole Nasamuad im Idubo Shloisha Pa'amim Biyom Echad Kavalchaymer. It's muad by goring 3 separate days far apart. Certainly it's a wild and dangerous animal if it gores 3 times on the same day. Ech Isha Nasis Zava Yomim. Ech Isha Lo Nasis Zava Re'iyos. Okay. Ma hanafkamina ben lamader meludi tura ben lamader meludi gavra. 3 groups of Adam come on the same day. Each group testified that on separate days we saw it gore. So again, in that situation, what would be the din? Lafi garsinenu begamara ech yiskin lamader meludi gavra l'chayvas Adam. Sheidu al negicha rishayna misham hada nasamuad the halimru hanach kamoy. The first ones could say mi havi adinan the basar gimel yama asu hani umeidle. So the Gavra gives no answer to Ude Gavra. That's what I wrote. The Gemara gives no answer to Ude Gavra. I'm not sure what that means over there. Okay. Not sure how I was trying to answer that. Okay, let's go weiter. Iboilhu. So hamashasa kalbe shel chavero b'chavero mahu. Let's say you incite a dog, your friend's dog, with another person. So what's the din? So mashasa vade potter. The one who incites is definitely potter, as we said in yesterday's daf, the grumba but azikin. Bal kelev mai. What's the deal with the owner of the dog? So mi amrina and matzi amrina, he can say anama avinile. What are you basically doing over here, right? O dilma amrina le kivan diyadas bekalbach to mishasile. You know that your dog can be incited, umishatase, and it was incited lo iboilach lo ashhuye. You shouldn't have left it around. So therefore, it wasn't even the person incited the dog of his friend to another person. It wasn't even him. So it wasn't the owner that did this. So Rav Zera Tashma, v'tam shehu atinakis memashmishin bo v'eno nogech bo eno nogech. It's a tam if you have an animal that can be touched by kids and will not gore. Hanogech chayev. However, mashma, if these kids are inciting this shore and it gored, so then the Baal HaShor will be chayev. And therefore, even though the ones were not the ones that were the owners of it, but it doesn't matter, still chayev. The Baal HaShor will still be chayev. Mikatani naga chayev, dilma ha naga chlo havi tam. This means it's not a tam. Vahi negicha lo mechayev. Maybe you're not going to be chayev on that negicha. Tashma. She's supposed to kelev. She's supposed to nachash potter. So he said if you incite a dog or a snake, you're potter. Myla potter mishasa v'chayev bal kelev. But the owner of the dog will be chayev. Little emo potter av mishasa. Maybe again the one who does the inciting, certainly we say the din of the garma mazikin. But even the owner may be potter as well. If we want to say that actually would be chayev in that case, shisahu hu ba'atzmo potter. If let's say as he's inciting this snake, but instead of the snake biting someone else, the snake bites the inciter himself, potter. My timer. Kol mishana v'lach v'shinamo potter, as you saw this before. Says Rashi, Shenoshach hakelev es hamashasa bal kelev potter. The owner of the dog will be potter in that case because it's an unusual circumstance. Which you saw before. You have two cows. One is walking and one is crouched. And the walking one kicks the crouched one. Patura. Because, as Rashi says, it's not normal for it to be crouching in Rosh Hashanah. So any animal that's doing something unusual, this other animal does something unusual to it by kicking it. So the owner of the ox, who's the mahaleches, that kicked the revutza, is going to be potter. On the other hand, revutza mahaleches chayeves. Because mahaleches is normal, and therefore if the revutza kicked it, you're chayev. In that you be chayev. When do you have permission to step on him? Or but to kick, that you don't have reshus. Okay. Hamashasa kalbo shel chavero al chavero mahu adin shel mashasa. So he said definitely potter, and the bala kelev is maybe it's a machlokas. It's not so clear what the answer is. Okay. TA 12. My nafkamina im gimel yom udi gavra udi tura. Okay, so we said this answer, but let's see how he writes it. TA12. Im also tosa kiti sahadi b'chad yoima, which is really the cleanest answer. It's very clear. TA12, which is the same thing as question 11. So my nafkamina also tosa kiti the sahadi b'chad yoima. So they all came at the same time. So if you hold it's the ude gavra, so it's not your fault, right? You didn't have a chance to be able to watch the animal. TB 14. Madua efshar adkan.